Kids who can't stand their parents once they grow up usually have one of these 12 reasons. Parent-child relationships should evolve as kids become adults, but when parents refuse to adjust, listen, or respect boundaries, things can get really rocky really fast. If a relationship isn't built on trust and communication, resentment builds, and before you know it, those cute kids who once adored you now avoid your calls. So here are 12 reasons adult kids distance themselves from their parents. Number 1, they don't feel emotionally safe. If every conversation feels like walking through a minefield, it shouldn't be a surprise when adult children start pulling away from their parents. Anger, outbursts, or criticism instead of support make kids feel emotionally unsafe and like they need to protect themselves. And in adulthood, it can sabotage their ability to make and maintain healthy connections, including with their parents. If talking to their parents feels worse than keeping things bottled up, guess what? Adult children are going to keep things bottled up. Number 2, their parents don't respect boundaries. Healthy parents respect their kids' autonomy and independence and even celebrate it. Emotionally manipulative parents tend to sabotage boundaries and even try to gaslight their kids into violating their own boundaries and beliefs. That's often because these parents rely on codependency to externally fulfill their misguided self-esteem. This kind of parent-child relationship isn't growing, it's crumbling. Number 3, they feel pressured to spend time with family. There's a difference between wanting to spend time together and being guilt-tripped into it. When visits feel more like an obligation than quality time, kids start dreading every interaction with their parents as they introduce shame into the family dynamic. Supportive parents understand that their adult children have their own needs, and a healthy parent-child relationship allows for compromise and respects everyone's needs for both connection and space. Number 4, their parents talk poorly about them behind their back. Nothing builds trust like hearing from Aunt Karen that mom's been trash-talking you at Sunday brunch again. Kids who grew up with parents who gossiped, criticized, or spread family drama behind their backs quickly learn not to trust or confide in them. These kids often learn anxious and avoidant behaviors rather than true vulnerability because they had to safeguard their emotions. And they often turn into insecure adults who stop sharing altogether. Number 5, their parents refuse to accept their differing beliefs. The world changes and so do people, but some parents refuse to acknowledge that their grown kids might have different opinions, values, or perspectives than them. According to counselor Dr. Rachel Gilk, shifts in values and beliefs, especially with the younger generation of adults, have contributed to a great deal of tension between parents and their adult kids. Adult kids are their own people with their own unique experiences and worldviews, and parents simply have to accept that. If every conversation turns into a debate where one side must be right, well, then don't be surprised when those kids start texting sorry, can't make it to dinner more and more often. Number 6, they don't feel comfortable discussing their childhood. As children, many of us learn to internalize uncomfortable emotions and experiences as a form of protection and to keep the peace. As part of their healing, especially if they're in therapy, adult children may try to bring up childhood experiences to clear the air, which unhealthy parents will often shut down, becoming defensive and saying things like, "I did the best I could," or "You didn't seem that unhappy at the time." Well, of course they didn't. They were a kid in a home who knew they weren't allowed to have their emotions. Instead of validating their kids' feelings, they make it all about them. And when kids realize their parents will never acknowledge their pain, the relationship doesn't really have anywhere to go. Number 7, their accomplishments go unnoticed. If a parent only calls when something goes wrong but never celebrates when something goes right, their kid notices. And they stop trying because they know the validation isn't coming. But even adults deserve and need to be cheered on, and parents with healthy connections with their adult kids take those opportunities to strengthen the parent-child relationship. Number 8, they struggle to communicate openly. A lot of adult kids want a better relationship with their parents, but they simply don't know how to communicate with them. If there was not much of a connection between the parent and child when they were young, that child often grows up without learning foundational social skills required for healthy, fulfilling relationships. They also tend to put their own needs aside for the benefit of their parents' ego, happiness, or comfort. And this leads to unproductive conflict, tension, and perhaps especially resentment. Number 9, their parents never take accountability. If "I'm sorry" is not in a parent's vocabulary, their kids have definitely noticed. Parents need to take accountability for hurtful language and actions. Even acknowledging a child's struggles from childhood is a huge step. Parents who refuse to admit when they were wrong or shift blame, or play the victim instead of apologizing are exhausting to deal with. And at some point, adult children get tired of constantly being the bigger person and just keep their distance instead. Number 10, their parents are overly critical. There's a fine line between giving advice and constantly nitpicking. If every life choice is met with, "Are you sure that's a good idea?" or "I don't think that'll work out," kids will just stop sharing things. Also, parents who want to project a perfect family image and receive validation for their success as parents are often overly critical of their kids. But the truth is, no one wants to feel like they have to continually prove themselves, especially to their own parents. Number 11, their parents contact them constantly. Some parents treat their adult children like they're still teenagers. Daily calls, random drop-ins, zero respect for personal space. And at some point, it's just too much. These parents perpetuate a sense of guilt and shame around expectations of contact, and kids are forced to take on the uncomfortable task of setting firm boundaries with an overbearing parent. Adult kids want a relationship, not a full-time surveillance team. Number 12, their parents refuse to express gratitude. A simple thank you can go a long way, but if a parent expects their child to be there without appreciation, it breeds resentment. Especially for kids that developed people-pleasing behaviors around their parents early in life, a lack of appreciation in adulthood is really discouraging. No one likes to feel taken for granted, and when gratitude is absent, emotional distance grows. A strong parent-child relationship isn't automatic. It takes effort, growth, and respect. But the good news is that if there is distance, it's never too late to rebuild. Parents who listen, acknowledge mistakes, and respect their kids as independent adults can create stronger, healthier relationships where both sides actually want to stay connected. Because at the end of the day, most kids don't want to walk away from their parents. It's painful. They want to feel heard, valued, and respected. And when that happens, healing is possible.